Namaste and welcome to class, and thank you so much sitting with us. And we are today in an island in front of Cartagena called Tierra Bomba, and it's a place where have a lot of history about how the Black nation escaped from slavery and settled here, and they were fishermen. And we also today have Priya with us. So Priya, thank you for sitting with us. And we are responding any questions. And I want also to invite you to place your questions, since we are in the process of just reviewing some lessons. You have almost finished your semester of studies. So I welcome any questions that you may have, and we can develop that. So Priya, what is the theme for you today?
Well, I have a question about the habit of self-judgment. And it doesn't really matter what area of life it is, whether it's work or money or relationships. I see a lot in my work and in my own process this habit of being too hard on oneself, or when we see that we're making a mistake or we have some area in our lives that we are immature, that we have this habit of self-judgment or being too hard on ourselves, almost like we're going to be punished if we do something wrong. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, the first thing is to acknowledge that you are aware that you are doing that. Once you are aware, then you have a choice to either repeat the same pattern or not. And you may say, oh, even if I am aware and I still do it, then we can contemplate three things. One, using the mind as a way of resisting to take any responsibility. And that responsibility have nothing to do with duty. It's more of acknowledging what really are your attributes, your divine attributes, and that you are able to display it, to be seen with no shame, right? Because behind that addiction of wanting to be harsh on yourself is wanting to be perfect. And in that perfection, then you don't have room for love. Unconsciously, you're saying, I am not worth it. I have to work really hard, and I want to work really excellent in an excellent way, because otherwise nobody is gonna love me or respect me or taking me into an account or just being seen that way. So behind that, you're using that mechanism not to promote yourself, not to say, well, I am ready to be seen, and to make mistakes in the learning, which is the second part, is very much in relation of how do you accept to be a student of life. That division that, oh, is something wrong, or I'm doing something good or bad, or it should be that way. That kind of high standards moralities are just saying that you don't acknowledge your divine attributes. You put it into a unjust trial. Then when you say, okay, I am using the mind not to grow up, not to take responsibility, not to take risk, not to learn new things where I may have mistakes, or in my mind I will have mistakes, then you have the first step where you're saying, I am refusing life. By using, and here's what it comes as something interesting, by using something that you're excellent about. Because most people that I see that suffer from that, they have some kind of mastery, some kind of excellency. And they are so identifying with it that they don't want to be seen in any other way. So if they have the mastery of knowing something, or especially in a career, they want to maintain that image. I know better, I know more. And with that, you are kind of exploiting your own mastery, some kind of mastery. And the master is all about surrendering what you know to the heart, to the one that doesn't know, that not always know, or that makes so mistakes, right? So in that tension, that no, I won't surrender to the heart, then you put the loop of the mind to protect you, to serve as a buffer to your heart. And from there, you cannot love. Really, you cannot be playful or light or just seeing life as a student, where you're curious and your own enthusiasm to discover something new. The third thing that I will say that it is very helpful is because it's a kind of an impediment of the mind or misuse of the mind, and the mind is so connected to the breath. So in that way, by breathing and by taking the time and really sincerely acknowledging your position of what that you're using your mind against you to avoid you, you can use that tool effectively. If not, you're just gonna be doing pranayams and breathing and so on, but in the back, you are actually not surrendering the mind. So the mastery in that point is that if you see it, is you're getting more ready to let it go. Right? If it's really torturing you, if it's really not, that you feel so uncomfortable, so you may be ready to let it go. And finally, I will add that the mind can have that micro perspective of micro management because you have lost a bigger perspective of yourself. For example, you judge that you move countries, and you judge that you should be better in that to match the cultural standards of that country, and that you need to perform, and that you need, especially if it's a country that have high standards of the mind, then you may feel that oppression. And that oppression is really a challenge. It's not necessarily that is your fault. But if you see in perspective and say, well, I have emigrate because it's part of my cycle of life, because it's my mission, because it's something that I needed to complete some ancestral work, and that's where the teacher can give you that perspective. You know, it enlarges your perspective and say, oh, okay, so it's not that it's a bad thing, but it's something that I have not understood in a bigger picture. So when the mind starts reducing like mice medicine, then it becomes very demanding and controlling and oppressive to whatever act you do. But when the mind expands, then it have more room to create, to dream, to imagine, to see a bigger possibilities in your life. And I think that's part of what we're lacking now, is that humanity is not dreaming, is not seeing that, oh, I feel the pressure, that society is changing, that economics are changing, education is changing, the frequency of the planet is changing, is more defined, and so on. But they're witnessing with no action. They're witnessing with no dream, with no potentiality, with no sense to say, oh, now from this situation, I can use it to create something new or constructive. So if that simple perspective that you're never stuck, you're never stuck. If you're stuck, it's because you have the good and the bad too strong, right? That's what it paralyzed. The two polarities have been conceptualized as a moral thing. So the negative is bad and the positive is good. Instead of seeing the negative sustain the positive and the positive sustain the negative, and both have to work together. It's not to avoid the challenges of our times, but to see how you can contribute it out of your comfort zone, how you can reinvent something that is constructive. Then the mind have a goal, have an inspiration, and it's the proper use of the mind. Because the mind that is not placed for what is capable of doing, it will try to invade the self and control the self. And then the self loses territory and you are in control of the mind, right? So is that also the right management of the mind, that we know how far the mind can go. It learns, it organizes, it have the logic, it gives you inspiration, can be neutral, but up to there. To perceive your self, you need a different organ, and that organ is the heart. So if you are overusing the mind, you are putting a barrier, conscious or subconsciously, to surrender to your heart. So with the right use of the mind, the self have more room to breathe, have more space to dream, have more probabilities of putting dots. And that's another thing that sometimes I say, you need to invent something, but and you say, oh, but what? I am so, blank here, and what? And we don't see that the mind is able to connect dots that are already existing in your life. For example, if you have your son and your son have certain challenges that are offering you, and your husband have certain job in certain part of the world, and you walk in the shopping mall and you meet a friend that do something, then the proper mind is creative and put those dots together, and from what is already existing in the coincidence and synchronicities of life, so that's why it's important, the discernment of information. Because let's say if we're scrolling, then there's so many information that you can tap into it to say, oh, maybe this. But then it's 10 other more than are useless to your own moment, to your own offering. So sometimes, you open the computer and pop, it's an email about some new IA that I have not used. And say, oh, okay, that's it. And that I close. That's it. So is this useful right now or not? If it's not, then I don't bother. But if it is, I am training my mind to connect with thought, with dots. And that those dots kind of promote something. That it could it could happen or not, but at least you take it to the far possible way. I give you an example. Recently, I was in one of the social media, and I saw a promotion of some land that it was developing here in Cartagena. So, oh, okay, there are hundreds of those promotions, but it's okay. I'll check, and I wrote and see, and then there's a conversation, and this is the numbers, and this is how the lot looks like, and so on. So I don't know now that if I am going to buy something, but at least I have take as far as I could before I say no to that probability, right? And then the mind have a dream, a work to work on it, have the numbers to figure it out, have the interaction with other people. What do you think about this? If it's not your expertise. So the mind need to be always engaged in something constructive. That way your life force and the tools that you have, which is your mind, your hands, get together, and then mostly your mind start to be reduced. Now, if it's something that you say, oh, I have been using that and I am so overwhelmed with all the list of things that I need to do and explore, right? Because that's another trick of that kind of mentality. I have so much to do and I have to think in everything and so on and so forth. So you need to discern again what is the flow of life that is doing the job for you, and that's what is surrender. And what you and your own capabilities, mind capabilities, need to do, right? So, for example, if we are in this beautiful hotel here, I am not going to micromanage the little things that they already know. I'm just flowing with it. I'm not going to, oh, how is your room? And should I have this? And am I going to have this or not? Let them manage their thing, and I flow with what already somebody else is managing. Otherwise, it's pride. You just want to be better than the others and intervene with others and assert yourself and say that you're better or you're good or make an impression or steal energy. So it's all, the mind is a precious tool, but if you're using it not to cross, not to see yourself, not to be in your heart, it will give you a ride, it will give you a good time. And that. So start with breathing, start with studying this lesson, taking notes. Don't be too much in outcomes. Let life surprise you, I will say.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. I thank you very much for sitting with us, and I will see you in our next class. Namaste.